Welcome to Annunciation Radio's Faith with Reasons, the program that examines what the church teaches and why. Faith with Reasons.
Ron Finn here, along with Shayne Stanfield. How are you, Shayne?
I'm doing well.
Good.
I'm trying to stay cool.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's not working.
It's a scorcher out there. It is really warm today, 91 degrees right now. But the good news is all that Canadian smoke that we've been breathing has given us a break.
Yeah.
At least for a few days. And, I'm sure it'll be back. But in the meantime, we'll have to, if we want Canada, we'll have to go to Tim Hortons, I guess.
Is it still burning?
300 and some fires are still burning there in
Good
Canada.
grief. Okay.
Yeah,
the smoke is just going someplace else.
Yeah, I guess so. Anyhow, we have a wonderful guest today. Everybody's favorite doctor is joining us, and Dr. Ray Gaurendi, of course, the doctor is heard every day here on Annunciation Radio, and I know he doesn't like a long intro, so I'll read it real fast.
Okay.
Yeah. Dr. Ray, of course, a clinical psychologist, author, professional speaker, and national radio and television host. His radio show, The Doctor Is In, can be heard on over 440 stations and Sirius XM Channel 130. His TV show, Living Right with Dr. Ray, can be seen on EWTN's Global Catholic Network and, of course, aired in 140 countries. He is everywhere. He's worldwide. He's also a best-selling author whose many parenting, family, and marriage books and audiobooks have helped folks strengthen their marriage and raise good kids. He has also written and spoken on Catholic teaching and practice, and his recent books include Jesus, the Master Psychologist, love that book, Living Calm, and Taught by 10, which I think when last time we had him on was when that book first came out. But his new book, Simple Steps to a Stronger Marriage, is available right now from the EWTN Religious Catalog and from Sophia Institute Press. Dr. Ray, how are you?
Ron, I do have bad news for you.
Do you?
EWTN wanted you to be the before picture on the marriage book.
Oh, really?
Whoa.
Well, that is bad news.
Yeah. I defended you. I said, no, put them little black things in front of his eyes so people don't know who it is.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. I mean, I'd love to be a poster boy, but I don't know if that's the way I'd want it. Loved your show today, by the way.
Well, thank you, sir. I don't know. Sometimes I get these questions, and I gotta be thinking, and then later on I go, well, I think I could have taken that from a different direction. But my wife will text me during a call, and she'll say, "Ray, say this." Okay.
Well, and I don't know, this book, it seems like there's quite a demand for this book because I know we're always talking about building healthier families and raising our kids, but I don't know how many books are really concentrating on a happier, healthier marriage. So what made you become compelled to write a book like this?
Two things different, Ron, with this book than probably the bulk of books out there. The first one is my recommendations. There are 10 of them. Very simple. Very simple. Do this. 6-year-old can do it. The second is I have something called resistance rationales, which are the common justifications that people use for not doing these things. People will ask me, what's the hardest part of therapy for you? Is it trying to understand where somebody is thinking? Nah, I've been doing it long enough. I can pretty much home in on where they're at. Is it giving them advice that might work? I said, well, given that I've heard so much of this so many times, I've come to understand which advice is more helpful and which isn't. Well, then what's the hardest part? By far, the hardest part, Ron, is convincing them to do it. Mm-hmm. That's the toughest part. And I think the book really hits hard on, okay, these things will work. They're simple. Why won't you do them?
Well, if you, I think the thing that you concentrate on here first is importance of developing habit of saying I'm sorry. It seems so simple, but if this is a practice, at some point you're going to learn to mean it, wouldn't you think?
Spouses will come into my office, and I will ask, when's the last time you apologized? Yeah, it was when our daughter was in kindergarten. Well, how old's your daughter now? Oh, she's an attorney. Yeah, it was our wedding rehearsal dinner. I spilled coffee on her napkin, and I said, hey, sorry about that. Now, there are plenty of reasons why spouses don't apologize to each other. Some of the more common ones are these. It'll be thrown back in my face. I tell spouses, if you want to get apologies, you better not throw an apology back into somebody's face 3 seconds after it's said. Even if you think it's fake, even if you think it's insincere, you better just listen to it and accept it as genuine, or else you're not going to get too many. That's one. Another one is, well, if I apologize, it sounds like I think I'm the one who's totally wrong and they're totally right. Now, we'll get to that in a second. Another one, and this, guys, if this is true, then we better all stop going to confession. Well, sorry doesn't make everything right. If you were truly sorry, you'd change your behavior. I've been going to confession for over half a century, more than that. And for the most part, I say pretty much the same sins every time. I've never had a priest say, Ray, you've been coming to me for 12 years, saying you're sorry for the same sin. Now, if you're truly sorry, Ray, you'd stop doing it. So I'm not going to give you absolution. Have you ever heard that from a priest?
No.
Right, but we do it to our spouse. Well, if you were really sorry, you'd stop doing it. Really? Maybe it's just weakness on my part. I can be truly sorry. I can regret what I did. But that doesn't guarantee that I can snap my fingers and never do it again. Here's another one. Do you know how people say, well, you gotta walk the talk. You gotta mean what you say. You gotta do it. Less words, right? They always say, make sure you act what you're saying, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, in most cases, that's true. It's easier to talk nice than to be nice. Hey, tell you what, I saw your lawn there. I tell you what, you need some help on that. You need some help dragging that stuff away. Give me a call. Just give me a call next week. I'll come over. And then the phone rings. I see the number. I recognize it, and I don't answer. Or, hey, Rod, let's get together for lunch, okay? I'm going to be in town sometime. I'm going to call you. We haven't gotten together for lunch. Let's get together for lunch. And it never happens. Why? Because it's easier to talk good than to do good, except one area of human relations, and that is apologies. Some years ago, I was stopping at a florist. I wanted to get a flower for my wife. Just out of the blue, figure, last time I did it was our wedding rehearsal dinner. So I figured, hey, every 30, 40 years, get her a flower. I don't want to spoil it. So I said to the girl behind the counter, I need one red rose, please. She said, what'd you do? I said, what? She said, when guys come in here and they ask for flowers, it's not a holiday, it's not a birthday, it's not a special occasion, they're making up for something. I said, well, hey, that might be other guys. My wife and I have a special relationship. She's not going to take it that way. I went home with my little flower, had it behind my back, kind of like kids do when they go pick a handful of stinkweed from the field to give to their mom,
Mm-hmm.
little 5-year-old. So I handed her the flower. She smiled. She said, thank you. And then she said, what did you do? And I said, did you ever work for a florist? Guys will do this a lot. They won't apologize, but, well, I act sorry. I act nicer now. I'm more pleasant. I'm more affectionate. I'm gonna act I'm sorry. As long as I don't have to say I'm sorry. I tell spouses, when you get frustrated over your spouse not saying I'm sorry, you'd like more I'm sorry. Tell yourself one thing. This is not because your spouse thinks they are superior, or that they're never wrong, or that they are a cut above you. No, it's the exact opposite. When somebody can't say I'm sorry, most of the time, it's because they're insecure, because they don't like what it would mean. I'm a failure. I'm bad. You're better than me. I'm flawed. That's what happens. And I tell spouses, if you're frustrated over not getting an I'm sorry, keep in mind that it isn't because your spouse thinks they're superior. It's most likely because it's too hard for them because they're insecure about it.
Well, that is so true. And when I think another area that often gives me trouble is we've been married so long that I can complete her sentences, she can complete mine. We kind of know what each other's thinking until I start assuming that I know what she's thinking. And then when I react to something that she hasn't said, she looks at me like I got lobsters coming out of my ears. What are you doing? There's a certain communication that exists that's nonverbal, but it's not always accurate.
Spouse will come into my office and say, I just wish that he would stick up for me when his mother gets snarky or makes a comment or criticizes me. I'll turn to the guy. Do you know why she thinks this? Not really. How long you been married? 21 years. You don't know why she thinks this? Well, not really. Have you ever asked her? They never even explored it. That's one of my simple steps. Ask a few questions. When do I do that? Why do you think I do that? Give me some examples. Get inside the other person's head. Guys, I do a lot of therapy. I'm not just a radio shrink. I do a lot of therapy. And people come into my office and they will say scary things. They will say hurtful things. They will say things that make absolutely no sense whatsoever. If I were to say, what are you? Some kind of goofball? What are you, ridiculous? That's nuts. Get your head together. They would leave my office right then and there. I have to try to get inside their head. I have to try to figure out how they got to that point. I got to try to understand before I can do anything about it. A lot of times spouses don't know why their partner thinks this, believes this, feels this way. They don't know. They've never asked. They've never explored it. They've never gotten to the point where they say, okay, I got to get inside her head or his head and figure this out. I may not agree with it. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's emotional. I think it's overreactive. Whatever it is, I got to at least try to understand it. So one of my steps is, there's two of them actually. One is listen a minute, and the other is ask a question. Very simple stuff. Very simple stuff. People want to be understood more than they want to be agreed with.
It seems like these two that we're talking about are somewhat tied to the first one about simply saying sorry and saying sorry regularly enough, because it seems to me that if you're taking the time to listen and you're taking time to ask questions, so you're opening up this communication in that moment of being sorry, it seems like it would tend to help the other to be more forgiving for the situation at hand.
Oh yeah, if that person thinks that you're at least trying. Now this isn't therapeutic rocket science.
Mm-hmm.
That you're at least trying to say, okay, I want to hear why you look at it that way. You're not going to defend yourself immediately. You're not going to argue immediately. You're not going to give the old, well, you do too. No, you're just going to try to figure it out. You're right, Shayne. You're right. The other person will be softer in coming across, perhaps, no guarantees, but perhaps, with an apology. There's something in the book I call personal apology percentage. It means, how wrong do you have to be in your mind? Now, this is all subjective. That's where we're not very objective when it comes to ourselves. But let's just assume you can be objective. How wrong do you have to be before you say, I'm sorry? Now, most people will say, well, 50%. I got to be at least 50% wrong in this exchange, this scenario, whatever. A Christian should have a very low personal apology percentage. For example, I come home and my wife is upset because I didn't call her again. So she really unloads on me. I mean, she's had it. She's frustrated. She thinks that means I don't care. I'm thoughtless, etc. And she's really carrying on. Now, I'm just sitting there. I'm not saying a word because I know if I say something, it's going to be ugly.
Yeah.
So for 13 minutes, this goes by. At the 13-minute, 14-second mark, I erupt. I yell, and I cuss. Now, later on, I think I probably shouldn't have yelled. I shouldn't have cussed. So in my mind, I was 9% wrong. She was 91. She went on for 13 minutes. But I was 9%. Am I going to apologize for my 9%? Am I going to say, I'm sorry, shouldn't have yelled, shouldn't have cussed? Or am I too worried that if I say that, she's going to think she wasn't wrong at all and I was taking 100% blame? A Christian should apologize for what part they're wrong, irrespective of how much they think the other person is wrong. And I guarantee you, as a spouse, if you do that, you will get perhaps a few more apologies. Well, okay, I know I shouldn't have carried on like that either. An apology can beget an apology in return.
Yeah. I was just going to say, it seems like that would help draw an apology out of the other person, and even open up these dialogues to take a moment to listen and to ask these questions. Try to get to the bottom of that.
The question becomes, Shayne, why should I? Our marriage has got a lot of friction, so why should I even attempt to understand why you think the way you do, why you act the way you do? Why should I even attempt it? And I tell clients, I said, because it's in your best interest. If you want a better marriage in the sense that it's got less friction to it, it's got less badgering, it's got less hectoring, it's got less whatever it is that's ugly, then it is in your best interest to do these little things, because unless you live with Satan or Satan's sister, that person will respond. Most people will. When you act nicer toward somebody, here's a question I asked spouses, and I said, this is like a number one diagnostic tool for your marriage. Who would your spouse say that you treat the best? Did they say, I'll tell you what, I wish I got a little bit of what she gives to the ladies at church? Would your spouse say, I'll tell you what, they love him at work. Oh, they think he's just Mr. Good Guy, Mr. Complimentary, Mr. Never Say a Scolding Word. I'll tell you, they don't live with him. If that happens, then what the diagnosis is that you've gotten lazy and sloppy and ugly with your spouse, because they see that you're nicer with everybody else. That's not a good sign. You want your spouse to be able to say, he or she treats me better than they treat anybody else. That's what you want to be able to say.
So you don't want to apologize by saying something like, well, I'm sorry it made you feel that way.
Yeah, or the old, I'm sorry, okay? Let's just move on, okay?
Yeah, right.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no. Those are slaps. Those aren't sorry.
Well, that explains a lot around my house.
Yeah, you can't. The word's got to have some context here, Ron.
I guess so. If you just tuned in, you're listening to Faith with Reasons, and you're hearing a voice, and you're going, man, that sounds like Dr. Ray Gaurendi. Well, it is. He's here on the show and talking about simple steps to a stronger marriage. And this book just came out, and it's just filled with real good common sense stuff that we never think about. And obviously, a lot of it does have to do with communication. And as you pointed out, it really when you're kind of tuned in and you're walking together as opposed to occupying the same space in two different places, that's the building block. That's how you really get started on building a stronger marriage.
You got to want to. That's what it comes down to. You got to want to. If a spouse comes in my office, do we have enough time, or you want to take a break quick?
We have about 4 minutes to break.
Okay, here we go. I've had people storm out of my office, and it's not who you would think. Spouses come in. Not unusually, one spouse sees themselves as far more Christian than the other spouse. Typically, it's the woman. She sees herself as more devotional. She sees herself as her faith is more important to her than the guy. He's either lukewarm, or he goes along for the ride, or he doesn't have much faith at all. So we talk, and her view is he needs to be a more committed, faith-filled husband. That's what he needs to do. We talk some more. And I say, do you see yourself as the more serious Christian? Yes, I do. All right. Then that means, and I got to be real delicate about this, that means that you operate out of a completely different set of principles than he does. Your faith says you need to be more tolerant. You need to be more forgiving. You need to be more charitable. I've had Christians storm out of my office because they don't want to hear that. Their view is, I'm the good one, that person's not. So don't be telling me I got to make improvements. But what I hope to get across to them is, if you do these things, this other person should respond at least somewhat. But you know what they say? They're afraid, no, I'll just be taken for granted. That's all. It'll just be expected. I'm already the good one. So what they do is they sabotage it. They don't want to do it. They don't want to do it. That other person needs to see what they're like before I'll change. And that's when they stomp out. And don't come back.
How sad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, do you typically find that to be the case almost always when you're dealing with somebody that is I don't know, what do I want to label it, closed-minded? Maybe that's not the word I'm looking for.
There is definitely a prideful component to I'm the holy one.
Oh, yeah.
Very much so. And oftentimes, this is the sadder part, Shayne. Oftentimes, I measure my holiness by my devotional practices.
Yeah.
I may be a daily mass goer. I may pray the rosary. I may have devotions that I do with the ladies of church. So, and I always say this to people. I say, it is much easier for me to pray a rosary than it is to apologize to my obnoxious sister-in-law. I can feel pretty good about myself when I pray a rosary, but hey, wait a minute here. Overlooking or accepting or apologizing to an obnoxious relative, now you're pushing on me.
Well, and that's what I love about this book is each chapter, is really it's a baby step that you can take. I mean, it offers a lot of encouragement to overcome resistance. And as you just brought up, one couple, a fictional couple in dialogue with an anonymous therapist, guess who? So I want to get into more of these baby steps that you can take when we come back on the other side of the break. Simple Steps to a Stronger Marriage by Dr. Ray Gaurendi. He is our guest on Faith with Reasons today. Ron Finn and Shayne Stanfield. We will take that little bit of a break and come right back. So grab a glass of water and hang in there. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Judy Cole from St. Richard's in Swanton, Ohio, and you're listening to Catholic Radio in the Diocese of Toledo on Annunciation Radio, Faith with Frequency.
Do you have something you'd like to ask our bishop? Most Reverend Daniel Lee Thomas answers questions from our listeners each and every week on the Bishop's Corner. Send in your questions about the faith, today's cultural trends, diocesan news and events, prayer life, anything on your mind. Click the Bishop's Corner tab at AnnunciationRadio.com or on our app and listen for his answer Thursdays at 4:30 p.m., Fridays at 11, and Saturdays at noon on Annunciation Radio.
Annunciation Radio would like to thank Masick Custom Builders for providing underwriting support. For more than 25 years, Masick Custom Builders has been offering custom home construction and renovation services throughout Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan. You may reach Masick Custom Builders at 419-861-7773. Online at MasickCustomBuilders.com. That's MACEK CustomBuilders.com.
When Jesus was fasting in the desert, the devil tempted him to turn a stone to bread, to become king of the world, and to throw himself down from the temple and defy mortality. All that boiled down to a temptation to renounce his frail humanity. Jesus chose hunger, powerlessness, and mortality. We're tempted because of ego to renounce our humanity. The devil's first temptation to Adam and Eve was, "You will become like gods." Ego can drive us to work to make a monument of accomplishments to ourselves. It drives us to earn more and more money because we think it makes us powerful. Drives us to obsess over the impact we make or how well known we become because we think that'll immortalize us. Give it up. There's a difference between you and God. God never thinks he's you. Do a gut check of those ways ego is driving your dreams. Because if it is, you're missing all that matters most. And your wife is probably missing that happy, carefree guy she married years ago. Send us a message at connect@reallifecatholic.com. This is Chris Stefanik from reallifecatholic.com.
Experience the incredible story of a woman who Time magazine named the most influential Catholic woman in the United States. Rita Rizzo, the future Mother Angelica, grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Canton, Ohio during the Great Depression. Rita's father abandoned the family before she was 5 years old. Her early years of trial were compounded by a debilitating illness until she was healed by Jesus through a woman named Rhoda Wise. That healing set her life on a course that would ultimately change the world. Learn the amazing story of Rita Rizzo at the Mother Angelica Museum in her hometown of Canton, Ohio. Go to www.motherangelicamuseum.com. Be inspired. Plan your visit now at motherangelicamuseum.com.
Do you want to put an end to abortion and the contraceptive mentality for good? Do you want to fight against the homosexual agenda and halt the march towards the legalization of same-sex marriage forever? Do you want to ensure religious freedom for ourselves and for our grandchildren? These things are impossible unless we convert the culture. St. Paul Street Evangelization is a grassroots initiative that recognizes this need and takes it to the streets. If you're interested in peacefully sharing your Catholic faith in a non-confrontational way with the people in your area, you can help. To learn more about St. Paul Street Evangelization, visit us at streetevangelization.com.
Now, back to Faith with Reasons here on Annunciation Radio.
And we are back here on Faith with Reasons. Ron Finn and Shayne Stanfield with a wonderful guest.
Yes, Dr. Ray Gaurendi, clinical psychologist, author, professional speaker, and national radio and television host. He has a radio show, The Doctor Is In, can be heard on over 440 stations and Sirius XM Channel 130. His TV show, Living Right with Dr. Ray, can be seen on EWTN, Global Catholic Network, and is aired in 140 countries. I want to know who translates all that.
Well, I've learned, they came to me, and this was a demand that EWTN had, and I struggled with it. They said, you need to know those languages, Ray. So what I've done is I've mastered Australian.
Nice.
So, hello.
Yeah.
We have a talk about, and that's where I'm at so far.
That's probably going to be the toughest one, you know. That's amazing. Well, I'm just learning something new every day. But just want to also add that you're a best-selling author whose many parenting, family, and marriage books and audiobooks have helped plenty of people strengthen their marriage and raise good kids. You've written and spoken on Catholic teaching and practice. You have actually recent books, which we'll be discussing here, continuing discussion here in a few minutes. Those include Jesus, the Master Psychologist, and Living Calm, and Taught by 10. And of course, today we're talking about Simple Steps to a Stronger Marriage, which is available now at EWTN Religious Catalog and Sophia Institute Press. So before we got to the break, basically the first half of the show, we were discussing, how trying to get the spouse to say or practice saying on a regular basis, "I'm sorry," and hopefully that helps in developing humility. That's what comes to mind. And then, of course, taking that opportunity to be silent, and then also to really listen, and then of course asking constructive questions. So I suppose we could springboard onto some tips that you've included here on how husbands can support their wives in parenting. And it sounds like a massive topic, but I'll let you take it from here.
One of the more common things I'm hearing from women is that they are the authorities in their home. They do most of the disciplining. They set the rules. They set the standards. And Disney Dad over there, Mr. Good Time, Mr. Laid Back, Easy Going, Mr. Honey, I was that way when I was a kid. I think I turned out pretty good. And the women are thinking, let's gather the relatives and vote. I'm hearing more and more women tell me they're setting the tone. And we guys are along for the ride. Do what your mother says. Do what your mother says. I do what your mother says. Everybody does what your mother says. You want to live? Do what your mother says. And I tell the guys, you may not like her style. You may think she's too wordy, too negotiating, too emotional. But she's mom. And she has authority. So when you hear her locked into a battle with a kid, don't sit in the Barca Lounger thinking to yourself, I close my eyes, I can't tell which one of them's a 9-year-old. Get in there, and the small step is protect. Most guys would not let any other human beings talk to their wives the way that child talks to their wives on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell the guys, get in there and protect her immediately. That's not just your mom you're talking to like that. That's my wife. I'm going to find out what she wants me to do about this. I always tell them you can't protect without permission. Get it signed. Get a notarized copy. And then I'm going to do more. And I tell the guys, when your wife feels that you got her back like that, and you're not going to allow this child to give her that kind of grief, and even if she's not handling it, you don't go in there like a wounded bear, but you go in there with a strong authority, she's going to feel very affectionate towards you. I mean, sometimes I used to give my boys a couple bucks. I said, go give your mother grief. I'll be right in. That worked till I was only giving them a couple bucks. Then she got upset. But I tell the guys, protect that woman. You know, my wife and I came up with something that I agreed to because she paid me, which was take a hit for your wife. In other words, At one point, all the kids were 12 and under. And sometimes she did most of the child rearing because I was out and about. I didn't have time to do that, guys. I was out and about writing parenting books. So she would tell them something that they didn't like, or they disagreed with, or she put a limit on them, or she said no. And what she was supposed to then do is say, talk to your dad. This is his idea. Now, the first 5 or 6 times they came to me, I said, it is? I did?
You didn't get the memo.
No. But after a while, I realized, yeah, it is my idea. It's not Mom's, it's mine. So I wanted to take the heat off of her. Yeah. I don't want her to have that kind of grief when she said, no, they can't go to so-and-so's house. It's too late. Talk to your dad. They come to me and say, what did Mom say? She said, no. I said, that's right. That was my idea. So I pulled the heat off of her, and I tell the guys, they don't understand. Half the time when guys come into my office with their wives, one of the complaints is he doesn't back me up. One of the complaints is he holds court. He comes in and he decides who's wrong, me or the 15-year-old. He tries to sort through it like a judge. And I said, wait a minute, these are not equals here. These are not two adversaries trying to grind out justice. This is a mother with authority, and this is a child challenging that authority. And these guys, I don't know what's happened to a lot of these guys. They've just gotten weak. And so that's one of the small steps in this book. Protect your wife. And the women feel it. When I talk about this in parenting talks, you should see the wives' elbows hit the ribs of their husband.
Did you hear what he just said?
You hear what he just said? Or they'll turn and look at him like, this guy knows you. Yeah, it's a common phenomenon, gentlemen.
Boy, and as we learned from your Taught by 10 book, I mean, you've had varying ages of children through your house through the whole time, and your wife homeschooled them. I don't know how she did that, but...
Well, it was amazing, Ron, because she only has a 4th grade education. So I told her, I said, stay 1 week ahead in the answer book.
You are the answer man, that's for sure. Very good. Simple steps to a stronger marriage. And, one of the things that you talk about in the book is why silence, you hear that phrase, silence is golden. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But, why can't it truly be that way?
If I were to gather all the people that I have said things regrettable in the heat of emotion, I put them in a room, they'd pack that room, because about 90% of what I've said in my life over the years has been in the heat of emotion. When I have time to think about it, I'm less likely to say anything designed to hurt. But in the heat of emotion, you're fired up. And what comes out of your mouth sometimes, you don't care. And worse, what comes out of your mouth sometimes, you intend. You want to hurt. And there's one of the steps I say is just don't say it, which means a simple rule to try to work on. I'm a weightlifter, and when I was younger, I worked my way up. You went into the gym, and you got better and better and better. And you got stronger and stronger and stronger. Now at my age, I'm trying to just stop the decline. But it's the same thing with just don't say it. It may be that you can really just shut your mouth for about 7 seconds until you erupt. But if you can work at this, work it up to 30 seconds or 35 seconds or 40 seconds, you are far less likely at the end of that time to still say it. Because your emotions have come down enough. Physiology is your ally. You don't stay that hot that long. You peak. It's a spike. And that spike starts to subside. And as it does, you can exert a little more self-control. You may still want to say it, but it's not overwhelming. And I tell spouses, just when you most feel like saying it, when you most want to fire back, hold off. Hold off. Just clamp your mouth shut. And you will be rewarded an hour later because you will be so happy you didn't say what you were just about to say. If I say to my wife, your parents raised a diva who just wants what she wants when she wants it. And it doesn't matter what anybody else wants as long as you get what you want. Now, that's terrible. But in the heat of emotion, you can say stuff like that. And if I go back and apologize later, one of two things might happen. One, okay, it's going to be skeptical. The person's going to say, you said it. But the second thing is this. What if that's what you really believe? Even though I say I didn't mean that, then why'd you say it? Is that what you really think? See, when you say stuff in the heat of emotion like that, later on, sometimes an apology is not even enough. Because there's a phrase, gentlemen, that is, you never have to apologize for what you didn't say.
Yeah. So do you find that I mean when you started to discuss this, the thought that came to mind, it's almost like you're throwing fuel on the fire, and then this is that opportunity to not do that. I mean, you might be feeling it on the inside, but the last thing you want to do is to add to the heat of the moment. I mean, even if your spouse is lashing back at you, that's not the opportunity to do the same.
When I first started weightlifting, I walked in and I put 100 pounds on the bar. I was 19 years old. Put 100 pounds on the bar, and I got several at 100 pounds. Well, by the time I was 30, I could bench 300 plus. Now, it took me a while to get to that level of self-discipline. It's the same thing with clamping your mouth. The more you do it, the more you have self-control. If it's part of your style is to not fire off when you feel most fiery, you get better at it. And I guarantee most of the time you will be ever so glad you didn't say it. And that's not just with spouses, that's with anybody.
So the self-control, basically, you're just improving upon a virtue.
Yeah, and it's not something that you have to say, okay, I'm going to shut my mouth for 4 minutes. No, nobody can do that.
Mm-hmm.
You're starting out with 10 seconds, and you're working it up. Kind of like, you go out for a jog, you're not going to be able to run a marathon. But you run for a year, probably do some pretty good distance. Although I had a problem with this gentleman, I didn't know what to do about this. They where I work, Abe said, "Do I want to be part of the 401k?" And I said, "I don't think I can run that far."
Me neither.
Yeah, exactly. I'm exhausted just thinking about that. Now, Dr. Ray, you obviously you encounter so many different couples on so many different levels, and obviously some of them are at the verge of collapse. I mean, the marriage is coming to an end, and even in this book, there are some ways that you can really stop yourself from getting to that brink point like that. And how willing at the end of a beautiful love story, let's call it, how often is it possible to resuscitate that situation and get the marriage back on track? Is that very difficult?
There was a woman named Maggie Gallagher who wrote a book years ago called The Case for Marriage. They observed couples over time, some significant number. 50% of them were on the door to divorce. But they didn't. For whatever the reason, they didn't go through it. 50% of them did divorce. They followed them up 5 years later. Of the ones who divorced, they asked them, are you happier now or more distressed? Approximately 80% of them said they were more unhappy. Of the people who didn't get divorced, they followed them up 5 years later. They said, how's your marriage? 50% of them said, it's better. So when we head toward divorce, or when we think it's an option, we're thinking this is going to make it all better. People will say to me, how do you deal with folks who come into your office? This happens very commonly, guys. One of the spouses will come into my office simply to be able to say, I tried counseling, it didn't work. They had no intention on making the marriage better. I tried counseling, it didn't work. It's usually someone who has met someone, and after years of a friction-filled marriage, they found somebody they think is better, so they want out. And people will ask me, well, what do you do if this is not a religious person? If this is a person who doesn't see any reason morally to stay committed? I say, well, what I will do then is to walk them through what they're looking at. For example, I'll say, person that you're right now thinking about going with, she have any kids? She got 2. How old are they? 11 and 9. Are they well behaved? Oh no, they're obnoxious. I have difficult. They're obnoxious. Well, how about your kids? I mean, you got 4 kids. How's your kids taking this that you're leaving? Oh, my 15-year-old won't talk to me. She thinks I'm destroying our family. What about the 12-year-old? Jury's still out there. The young ones are okay. Well, when you have visitation, when your 15-year-old comes to see you, what if your new person in your life doesn't like your 15-year-old? So what I do is I just take them through all the complications that they're inviting, that they haven't even thought of. Their view is, if I get out of this marriage, I'll be happy, things will be better, there won't be any complications, it'll all be cool. I can't tell you how many kids want to have nothing to do with the parent who left the marriage when these kids get into their 20s and say, you know what, I mean, I do go see my dad every once in a while, but I tell you, I don't really have much of a relationship with it. That's very common. So that's one of the ways, I always say this, when God says do it this way, don't do it this way, he's got his reasons. He knows what works and what doesn't work. He's not doing it just to be a killjoy. So I can take the complications in a situation like that and really point them out to the person. Now, most of the time it doesn't stop it. Most of the time their view is, well, I'm leaving anyway. By the way, gentlemen, you know the number one reason why most marriages end?
No.
Well, first of all, 80% of the time, it's the woman. 80% of divorces are initiated by the women.
Mm-hmm.
But second of all, it's not pathology. It's not pornography. It's not gambling. It's not adulterous relationships. It's not abuse. It's, I really don't like you at all anymore. And those are the ones that can heal. They really can, because they're not filled with pathology. They're filled with two people who have drifted terribly apart.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's sad.
It is very sad. Now,
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, this seems to be the next thing I wanted to bring up, because you discuss affection and how even affection, in a lot of times it could be just simple, but you actually write about how affection chills in a marriage, which could be another wedge, really.
Are you familiar with the physical law called the law of entropy?
Vaguely.
Well, I'm not going to have you guys be my lifeline on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire then. The law of entropy says that everything decays. Given enough time, bodies age, iron rusts, buildings crumble, mountains crumble, sun will burn out. In time, the universe is heading toward decay.
Mm-hmm.
There's a parallel law. I call it the law of social entropy. What that means is, in relationships, the effort tends to decay. I don't use manners with you like I did when we first were meeting. I don't compliment you like I used to. I don't touch you like I used to. I don't notice your attributes like I used to. It may not be hostility. It's laziness. It's sloppiness. It's 21 years of familiarity, so I really don't do this anymore. And I say that law of social entropy takes down a lot of marriages because it just becomes a sort of dead zone where if one of the partners meets somebody else, that's a danger sign because that new person is exciting, that new relationship, we try hard, I'm on my best behavior, she's on her best behavior. The law of social entropy. I talk about that in the book. I say, look, you get lazy. You don't do the things you did the first year or two of the relationship. You just get sloppy. And that can take a toll. You got to put the effort into pulling back up those parts of the relationship that you once did.
So I have to ask, in all of your years of experience in dealing with couples, even individuals maybe following a divorce, where does this start? I shouldn't say start, but where is this concentrated? Is this primarily the man that contributes to this, or is it split 50-50, or is it more the female? I guess the loss of affection.
I think one of the reasons that 80% of women initiate divorces is that they become more emotionally discontent quicker than guys do.
Mm-hmm.
You look at this is not kind of the sexist thing to say. This is reality. This is the research. That women generally tend to be more socially aware. They're more able to communicate feelings. They communicate more. So in the marriage, they have expectations for these kinds of things. The guys tend to be more able to just kind of go along. Not unusual for a couple to come into my office and the woman says, "Let me tell you all the things that I'm unhappy about." And the guy says, "I thought everything was going okay." Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's not unusual.
Yeah.
Okay, the guys don't see it as anywhere near as emotionally distressing as the woman does. I always say this. I say, for most of human history, and even now in many cultures, women and men had a very complementary relationship. The women took care of the home front. The guys took care of building things, killing food, lifting things. Very complementary. They needed the guy's strength. They needed the guy's virility. And the women had a certain more defined role. Well, that's not so anymore. Our culture is the women are as educated, if not more so, than the guys. They are more able to function socially than at one time. So as a result, they would like the guy to be more expressive, more affectionate, more communicative, more understanding. And it doesn't come as natural to guys. It's harder. Guys, I'm not making excuses for them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trivializing it, but it is harder for guys. They're just not as good at this as the women are. So the women can get frustrated and get very frustrated. My wife, one time, she was talking to a number of ladies from the church, and she hung up the phone, and she said, these ladies were very frustrated with their husbands. My wife said, "You know what I think? I think they'd like to be married to a woman who can lift heavy things.
That's a great answer.
Well, the reason why I asked, because you had mentioned the 80%, and I was wondering if it had something to do with the guys. The guys, pushing the women to that point. Because again, you mentioned it. It was the guys just kind of go along, and the expectation, of course, is the woman, and of course, silence and all this other stuff can just add to this further, driving this wedge.
In general, and again, these are generalizations. I don't want to get in trouble for this.
Mm-hmm.
The guys are less emotional beings.
Mm-hmm.
Janet Smith tells of if you graph a woman's hormonal cycle through the month, it's a jagged line all over the place. If you graph a guy's, it's a flat line.
Mm.
So in a sense, the guys can get lazier quicker. It's just okay. I don't think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's okay. I'm fine. I come home. I don't really talk to her much. I go sit on the couch, and they just view that as acceptable. Whereas the woman can be frustrated and unhappy. She wants more than that. I tell the guys, you don't have to be Mr. Expressive, but just ask her about things. They like to be asked about things, about their lives, about their frustrations. Just ask.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. And I'll tell you what, every marriage needs some simple, basic steps. And this book is perfect not only for men, but for women as well. Especially when you consider what the divorce rate is, and even in marriages that stay together, even though they're not happy in their marriage. It's a great way to do that. It's just a very simple thing. Simple steps to a stronger marriage. Dr. Ray Gaurendi, this book is available at EWTN Religious Catalog. Thank you so much for joining us on Faith with Reasons today.
Thank you, Ron. If they want a signed copy, they can go to my website, drray.com.
Oh, wonderful.
Awesome.
drray.com.
Yep.
Great. Say hi to your wife for us.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Take care.